Open world games are incredible for their size, their scope, and their ability for us to become completely immersed within them because there are no artificial barriers that stop us from being able to explore. They do, of course, have environmental barriers and enemies to battle, challenges to overcome, and of course, the beautiful vistas that open world video games are famous for. What's in that castle just over there that I can see? Or what's on the other side of that desert over there? Could I get to the top of that mountain? Let's find out. Hello, my name is Ben Byrne, and this is what you need to know about running an open world D&D campaign. It can be hard to capture the feel of an open world video game within Dungeons & Dragons 5e because the players very often can't see to the horizon. They can only see what has been described to them during the course of the game, which is very often only what is in their immediate surroundings. You might describe to the party that they're traveling down an old beaten road in a deep dark wood, and they know they're headed towards a village that's just ahead of them. But do they know that there's a mountain range to the north that could be explored, or a swamp with ruins in it to the south that they could also go and find interesting things in and battle interesting creatures? An open world D&D campaign isn't a sandbox D&D campaign. I don't mean the same thing. Sandboxes kind of unfold in front of the players, and it means that they can, in theory, go off and do anything they want. An open world campaign presents a crafted world that the players can explore that allows them to see to the horizon and say, I want to go to those mountains off in the distance over there. There are 5 steps that I use when I create an open world D&D campaign for my players, and you can use them too to craft one for yourself, and they are as follows. Number 1, I start with a region map, an area where part or all of my campaign is going to take place. The second step is to fill it with interesting things that the party are going to go and explore and interact with. Number 3 is that the story might start to present itself to me and become more textured as I realize 2 different locations might be connected by a flowing thread through the story. Number 4 is to plan out only the areas in detail that are going to be relevant to the next session. And number 5 is frequent DM advice, which is don't overplan. I'm going to go into these steps in detail during the course of this video, and to do so, I'm going to use a piece of software called World Anvil. If you've never heard of World Anvil before, it's a world building software which is absolutely perfect for creating an open world D&D campaign in the different things it allows you to do. We'll go into it in detail in a moment, but if you want to check World Anvil out, there is a link in the show notes below. Otherwise, let's start building our open world D&D campaign. The first step to creating your open world campaign is to create your open world. So start with a region map, a map of the area in which your campaign is going to take place, which you can literally show to your players. So where do you get region maps? Well, you can literally just sketch and draw them. That's what I used to do for a very long time. There is online software like this one that I've just made using Incarnate. You can just get them from online, scrolling down Pinterest boards as long as you're not planning to publish your adventure anywhere. Or if you want, you can back a Patreon creator and they make maps specifically for this sort of purpose for D&D. And your region map may be of any different size. If this is your first campaign that you're planning yourself, you might want to start relatively small, maybe a village and the wilderness that surrounds that village. But region maps can be as big as continents and can span entire campaigns entirely within that one region. You want to make sure that your region map has a diversity of environments and locations, as well as forests and mountains. You want to include rivers and bogs and icy wastelands, deep dark swamps, underground areas quite possibly. Sandbox purists might might feel like talking about a discrete region map to use for the entirety of your campaign kind of flies in the face of an open world idea where the players could literally push beyond the bounds of the map. But it's possible to have region maps within world maps or region maps within other region maps. Just like in The Witcher, you can't walk from Velen to Skellige.
Ben's Witcher Watch.
You've got to catch a boat and travel from one region to another before you can start to explore again. The next step after you have your region map and you've filled it with diverse environments is to fill it with areas of interest, interesting locations where your players are going to actually explore and kind of start to fill the region map with the meat of the game that you're going to experience with your players. And this is where World Anvil comes in especially handy. They have this excellent tool, which is called the Atlas, which allows you to import a map that you've created or you've found somewhere and then drop pins on that map that give information to either you as the dungeon master as you're running the game, or the players can read the pins outside of the game to get an idea of what's around them, even when they're not playing the session. So let's jump into this world map that I've created as an example and take a look. This is the village of Laurel. And as you can see, I've added a couple of pins to this region map, which demarcate different areas that the party can go and explore. So we have the village here on the eastern side of the map. You can see that we've got the tavern here. When I scroll over a pin, you can see information pops up above the pin that lets me as the DM know what that pin is specifically, but it also lets the players know. They could go to the Grey Stable, the tavern. They could go to the Laurel Marketplace, or they could go to Gabriel's Menagerie, which is the arcane merchant in town. When they're not even running the game, they could just kind of get an idea of what these locations all are. They could go and read the bounty board bounties without needing the DM to read it out to them. So while they're at the marketplace, maybe one character just reads the bounty board bounties in their own time while another scene is happening. And then when it comes back to their character, they can say, oh, I read this bounty over there. Can we go and investigate that? And you can say yes. And they can feel so much more immersed in the world that you've created for them. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're like, well, doesn't this just give away all the secrets that I have for my campaign? Well, no, because World Anvil allows you to set different things to public or private, which means that your players only have access to what you want them to have access to. What you're currently seeing is a map of Laurel from the DM's perspective. And you can see, as I said, the village. You can see that the bridge, the North Bridge, is guarded. You can see that there's some trouble down by the South Bridge, which there might be rumors about in town. But these pins over here in the forest and the mountains and down on the road, these are encounters that the party will need to go and discover. So I can make them hidden. The information is there for me if I need it as the DM to quickly refresh myself during the session, but the party can't see the pins there. They just know there's a forest there that they might want to go and explore. You'll note that as I scroll over the Grey Stable Tavern, there is more info listed here in the pin, and that will take me to an article that gives me all the information, all the notes I need as the Dungeon Master to be able to run the session. But if the players click that link, they won't be able to see the article. So they only see what you as the Dungeon Master want them to be able to see so that they can explore the rest of the world in the game session as you run it. You always get that question in D&D, what does my character know? Well, they can actually know it using this approach to world building without needing to ask the DM, meaning they feel so much more immersed in the game world when you play the session. The next step in building your open world campaign is to let the story start to take shape as you place locations and encounters onto your region map. Now, you might already have a campaign or a story that you want to tell with your players in mind, such as a corrupt king battling with their rebel nation, or a dragon that's threatening to burn down the city. But as you start to place more locations onto your world map, you might start to realize that some of these locations are connected together, and that starts to create new narratives and new stories that are presenting themselves to you as you're creating your world. This means that your world is going to feel more textured and more real if there are locations that are connected together. If the party go and explore one area, that might have rippling effects into other locations in your game world. If we return to the village of Laurel, we can see that this central bridge is guarded by a town guard who are stopping anybody from crossing to the western side. This is because the Western Forest is home to some rebel elves who are attacking caravans that pass on the road to the south of their forest. The guards also tell the party that there is an ogre living under the southern bridge and that they can't go and deal with it because they can't continue to guard the northern bridge and go deal with the ogre. They just don't have the manpower. So the party can decide to go and explore the elves in the Western Forest if they can convince the guards that they can help, or they might decide to travel down and talk to the ogre. If they do talk to the ogre reveals that the reason they're living under the bridge is because they've been driven out of the southeastern forest because of a dark mist that's beginning to creep in and bringing with it all sorts of nasty monsters. See how the party are encouraged to explore more of the region map as they go to new and different locations. This might all start from the bounty board, which is in the village. They start to read the bounty board, learn of the ogre, travel down, talk to the ogre, and then from the ogre, they go and explore the dark southeastern forest. Each location on your world map should ideally point to at least another 2 locations that the party can go and explore. And that might not always be the case, but what you're trying to create is a web, a network of encounters and locations that your party can go and explore, so they're not forced to go and encounter each location in a single narrative through line. They can go and find the places on the region map that interest them most, and that means that they feel like they're in control of their own story, and that is the very essence of an open world game, where the party feel that the world is open before them and they can go anywhere, explore it as they like, and affect the world by changing what's going on in each of those locations, which has, as we discussed, rippling effects back through the world that you've created. So, you have your region map, and you've got your locations placed down on your region map, and you've started to get some ideas about how these different locations are connected and some possible avenues of exploration the party might follow through. Now you need to flesh out your planning and flesh out those locations that you think the party are going to encounter in the next session, or perhaps in the first session of your campaign. So for example, the campaign has started and the party have arrived in the village of Laurel, and I describe to them how there is the marketplace that they might want to visit to stock up on equipment or gather rumors. They notice the bounty board on the western side of the marketplace, and I might give the physical description just from the pin that I have here on the world map. Or I might tell them about the Grey Stable, this tavern which is quite imposing over the marketplace, and maybe that's a good place for them to go and gather rumors. And when I go to the tavern, I talked about this more info link a little bit earlier. Now I'm going to click it during the session that I'm running, and I can see there is a more detailed description here that I've given myself for the tavern to describe what the interior looks like. I have the services listed so that when the party ask, can they get food here, or how much does a night cost to stay in the tavern, I've got it listed there and I don't have to flick through any books. And I've also got a list of NPCs that are listed here in quite some detail, giving a physical description as well as the information that these NPCs might be able to give to the party. Now, your notes don't have to be quite as detailed as I've made mine here. I tend to put the description into dot points because it's easier for me to just read the next dot point than it is a big chunky paragraph. And the information that the NPCs provide are also in dot points with headings on them so that the NPCs can bring up a certain topic and the party can ask for more information on that specific topic. But if you want to have less information and you like running off the top of your head more, feel free to do that. If you want to include more detailed descriptions as I have, do that nothing is wrong. Neither way is wrong. This also isn't an exhaustive list of what could happen in this tavern. I could still add NPCs off the top of my head if I feel the party are looking for something specific. They want a Strider sitting in the corner, so I invent this Strider-like character to give them news of the elves in the Western Wood. Or if they come in stealing for a fight, maybe I have a particularly grumpy NPC start a bar fight, or some bandits off the road come into the tavern looking for trouble. So while this planning looks detailed, it's not the limit of what can happen within this tavern. So once the party have explored the Grey Stable to their satisfaction and they want to go back out and explore another place, I have a link here at the bottom of the article which links back to the region map. And now the party have decided that they want to go and investigate the ogre that's living under the bridge to the south because they heard about it in the tavern. I can now click more info here and it brings up the information, a more detailed physical description of the bridge and a description of the encounter they are likely to have with Trevor the ogre. I can include anything in these articles. I could include pictures if I wanted to. I could include stat blocks if I wanted to. There really is no limit to how much prep you can do in building your world in World Anvil if you want to take the time to do it. But you're running an ongoing campaign of D&D, so you do have to be a little bit careful to not over prep. And the final piece of advice for planning an open world D&D campaign, or pretty much any Dungeons & Dragons campaign, you're going to hear this advice a lot, especially if you're new to the hobby, is to not over-plan your D&D campaigns. Only plan the areas in any real detail that you expect the players to encounter in the very first or the very next session. So in my village of Laurel, we have seen that I have put quite a lot of detail into places like the tavern and the quest board and perhaps Trevor the Ogre's bridge, because I think the party might reach that before the end of the session. But I haven't put any real detail into the Western Forest where the elf rebels are living that I've mentioned. There's no detail in navigating the forest or the elven bandit retreat because I expect those to be places that the party will explore in future sessions. If we come down to the southeastern part of the map, we can see that there actually is a little bit of detail in the elven ruins, but this is the entrance into a dungeon. And I haven't planned out the whole dungeon yet, just the entryway that the party might reach by the end of that very first session. The reason you don't want to overplan out in too much detail the different locations on your region map is because the party might not go to those locations.
It was said that you would destroy this, not join them!
Which means that a lot of your prep time can be unnecessarily wasted and not used as wisely as it possibly could. So if the party decide to go from the village of Laurel down to the southeastern part of the map and explore those misty woods, then any prep time that I put into the Western Forest is wasted for that week because the party aren't going to see any of it.
It's okay.
Okay.
It's possible and likely that the party might wrap around at a later date and go and explore the Western Forest as well, in which case you can plan for that ahead of those weeks where the party are telling you that they're interested in going and exploring those locations. But it means that you've got no wasted work because you only need to prep those locations if the party do want to explore them. Every DM will tell you that it is inevitable. You cannot avoid having wasted prep time when you're running a long-going D&D campaign. You're going to come up with some idea, some location, some region that you get really excited about and put a lot of time and effort into planning, and the players just don't go there.
We've got a little bit of... got an emergency back here.
Instead, they want to go to a different location you haven't put as much time into yet, and that location isn't quite ready, and that happens. So you always want to remain nimble on your feet and make sure you have tools to kind of buff out a session in case the party are heading in a location you didn't expect them to. Include things like random encounters that you could just throw onto the road in front of the party. And those are the steps that I take when planning my open world Dungeons & Dragons campaigns. If you found the video useful, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like. And if you want to check out World Anvil for yourself, I'll put a link up in the top corner over there and a link down in the show notes so that you can click it in your own time and check out World Anvil. It really is an excellent toolkit. If you are a GM who has tips and tricks for planning your sessions of your own, if you think I missed anything, leave a comment down below and we can build a resource for new players to come and draw from in planning their sessions. And make sure to subscribe to the channel to follow along. I will be back next week and every week with more advice on how to run Dungeons and Dragons.